We're back. We're back and we're
Welcome
live.
back.
We're live. I hope we're live.
Live on the Facebook.
The Facebook.
Hopefully, I did not just clip my microphone right.
You might have. It doesn't
We are
matter.
back.
It's fine.
We just had a fantastic conversation. I guess I shouldn't say it's a little subjective, I suppose, but
Yeah,
we
listen
just
to the
had
rest
a
of this episode.
Yeah.
very in-depth conversation about To Kill a Mockingbird, our first film from 1962 that we discussed. We are now talking about our second film from 1962, which is Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which, just as a reminder, anybody who has seen Feud
Yep.
or has heard of Feud, the Ryan Murphy television limited series starring Susan Sarandon and, oh my god, I keep wanting to say Jane Lynch. What's her name, John?
Jessica Lange.
Jessica Lange, Jesus.
Yes.
Two-time Academy Award winner Jessica Lange. But before we get into Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, let's do a quick round of news and or what you've been watching. Dave, you ready to take it away?
Oh, I didn't know I was going first, but yeah.
You're always go first, Dave.
Sorry, I was fake surprise. I forgot we're on camera. I watched Battleship this week. I went back to Battleship.
What?
Oh shit! Wait,
Yeah.
wait,
That was Rihanna.
yeah.
Come on, guys. That movie is just good fun. It is good fun.
Was it as good as Geostorm? I feel like that came out the same summer.
I feel like
didn't it?
you're borderline there. Come on. Yeah.
I feel
Yeah, I
like
had
You had
a
a
good
good time, though?
I always have a great time. I've watched it a couple of times. It's fun. It's got an AC/DC soundtrack. You know, you can't go wrong. And you know, when you need to distract yourself from the week that everybody else gets a fucking PS5 except you, then it's the perfect thing to sit there and watch because they're blowing the crap out of things.
Everybody got that.
Yeah.
Everybody got that text. What is it streaming on? Because I kind of have been wanting to watch a big, fluffy, stupid.
I think it's on
action movie.
HBO Max.
Okay.
Pretty sure it's on
Thank
HBO Max. Yeah.
you. HBO Max. You're welcome. That's what you've been watching, right?
That is what I've been
was your
watching.
thing?
Yeah, that was it. That was it.
Other than our movies.
Well, I kept
watched,
going with Star Trek Discovery and things like that. But yeah.
Nice, of course. I also have just kept going, kind of taking a break from my one virtuous show, Star Trek. I went to another virtuous show. I've been watching The West Wing. I've just been crushing it. Maybe that is not the right thing to do right now.
So
It felt like it was
culturally relevant,
motivational.
yeah.
It was motivational leading into the election. Now I'm happy. I'm still watching it with hope that maybe it'll be something like that again. But who knows? Fuck it, Jeff. What have you been
Hope,
watching? And then we're
man.
going to talk
So
about
much
a
fun
specific news article with David Fincher. But Jeff, what have you been watching?
I have been begging my significant other to watch the Queen's Gambit. So I've been like literally on my hands and knees.
Yeah.
I'm like, can we
The
just
world
watch
is
this show?
losing their mind over this.
I'm in grad school, so I don't have a ton of time. So when I have a window and I'm like, can we just watch the Queen's Gambit? I haven't started Mando yet, although I will catch up. I'm not done with The Boys, but I'm like ready for Queen's Gambit. And she is so obsessed with Nurse Jackie right now. It's almost like I feel like my hand's gonna get bit off if I reach for the controller. So we've seen 5 seasons. I haven't seen all of them, but Nurse Jackie, fantastic binge show. We've been doing a lot of the binge shows that most people did in March and April. We've been doing it in October. We watched Broadchurch and Nurse Jackie as our
Wow.
November shows. So anyway, we're watching that, but Queen's Gambit is next on my list, and then we got to get into the Oscar movies. But for now, that's it. BTS and Nurse Jackie.
I mean, yeah. Let's
Very
just
bingeable show.
briefly. We can briefly touch on what happened yesterday with
Yeah,
David
so,
Fincher
yeah,
dropping
introduce
some
it.
comments in an interview,
I've been waiting for directors
and
to talk like
and
this for
Twitter
so
lost
long.
their fucking mind.
What do you mean, Jeff? You've been waiting for people to talk like this for so
For
long. What do you
directors
mean when
to
you
be
say that?
candid about the industry. You know, there's like I feel like we consume, you know, variety and people who consume variety and that kind of stuff, and then it's almost like niche. It's almost like you have to go seek out this information. Why don't other directors speak about their own industry publicly? I know that they need money and funding and networking and stuff, but we think that candid is what you see on TV and like interviews or even on podcasts, but for people to actually have like a critical response to something industry related, whether it's good or bad, is just so rare. So it was refreshing in that sense until you really read behind the lines and he was spouting out a lot of opinion. But anyway, that's what I think. Go ahead.
Well, honestly, I think so. Basically, what we're saying is that Dave, why don't you set it up and then we'll get into it.
Well, I mean, he was interviewed for his new movie Mank, that is basically about how Citizen Kane was made. He had a little bit of stuff to say about Orson Welles. He had a little bit of stuff to say about Joker, the Joker movie. Is it? What was it? It was something along the lines of Joker wouldn't have been a huge hit if The Dark Knight wasn't as massive as it was.
Nobody. The quote is, nobody would have thought they had a shot at a giant hit with Joker had The Dark Knight not been as massive as it was. I don't think anyone would have looked at that material and thought, yeah, let's take Taxi Driver's Travis Bickle and the king of comedies, Rupert Pupkin, and conflate them, then trap him in a betrayal of the mentally ill and trot it out for $1 billion. I mean, quote from David Fincher there.
I can't imagine why that got some comments on the fucking internet.
Well, and the weird thing between that is the reason that we thought that The Dark Knight and let's just say Batman Begins could work, it's because there was just a Batman franchise film 16 years before the Batman, before Christopher Nolan's Batmans came out. So he's kind of shortchanging history there, but I get what he means. Joker being $1 billion movie is because Dark Knight was $1 billion movie. Yeah, but anyway.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
I don't
basically,
know. I don't know if that's the case. I mean, Joker was a well-made film. It was sure it drew on like some previous works and stuff, but like I was talking to my wife about this today, and and she was like, okay, so I watched Dark Knight and I've seen a few other things along that line, but Joker is the first one where I felt really uncomfortable, and it's relentless.
Chloe hates it because she hates it because of how traumatized she is by it.
Yeah, and I feel like that deserves some credit.
It does, but that's less interesting to me than I think what he's ultimately saying is that if we had called him anything other than Joker, you probably wouldn't have seen that movie.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's the point he's making.
Yeah.
Is that we're wrapped up in these. We're no longer following idea-driven.
True.
Right. He's basically his biggest argument is that. Let me find another quote here.
That goes into his second point about the 5 families. Yeah.
Yeah, the 5 families, the big studios, don't want to make anything that can't make them $1 billion. You know, this whole conversation that we've heard a lot of our better directors.
He was quite glowing on streaming too. Like it was like streaming are the ones that are investing in the dangerous stories now.
Well,
yeah,
and that's why that's
true.
That's what he's saying. He's saying the good thing about Netflix, which we knock it all the time because here we are, we want to consume movies, and Netflix doesn't even give us a fucking heads up of when a huge movie's coming out. All of a sudden, like they dump out a movie, like what I don't even have a good example right now, but it's like
no, that's good, dude. That's a good point.
Where did this movie come from? And so it's the whole way of us evaluating movies and what's good and bad and all the trends that we used to are shaken. But at the same time, the one thing that streaming has is they'll spend $100 million on The King, and if it's not the hugest hit in the world, who the fuck cares? It's just one of their movies. They know if they put out 50 movies, a bunch of them are going to be hits. People are going to stream waiting for the next movie. And the other way of this movie has to make money. Right, and this goes back to the Blumhouse films, where he's basically like, here's $100 million. I'm gonna make 20 films. If 2 of them are successful, I make $1 million. So let's just do that. You know what I mean? This is not crazy what he's saying. It's just the way he's glowing streaming versus the 5 families, so to speak, like the actual old studio format. That paradigm was very surprising the way he put it for me.
Yeah, and he even says. Here's another quote from him. There's still nothing better than seeing the curtains open and, 700 to 1,200 people sharing a great film together. But that hasn't been my experience in a long time. I think he's saying that it's becoming more frustrating to go to the movies. It's more expensive. There's a lot of people who don't take it as seriously. Everybody has a fucking cell phone on. It is a frustrating experience if you don't have if it's not a good experience, it's probably a really frustrating
Turn your fucking
one. There's so
off,
many
people.
Assholes. Yeah, the phones and everything. Our attention issues are way out of control. So I don't think it's just that we have phones, it's that people don't treat experiences like that with the same respect that they used to. So we know what he's saying. And Jeff, to your point earlier, I think it took someone like David Fincher, who is a controversial character in the filmmaking world, because I have heard Paul Thomas Anderson and Tarantino make these comments before, but I don't think film Twitter lost their fucking mind the way they did when David Fincher, who likes to put erect cocks at the end of Fight Club just to piss people off and stir it up a little bit. I also think that he is a very interesting person to be having this conversation because he was one of the very first major successful directors to go into business with one of the streaming services. House of Cards legitimized Netflix. We don't have to talk about any of that controversial stuff with his leading actor that was in that series. Yeah, no. What he chose to do with that streaming service changed the way we see Netflix specifically. Because at that time, if anyone remembers, we didn't look at HBO the way we looked at Netflix. Netflix was trying to do this new thing. They were trying to hustle out stuff. And I do totally agree with you. The way they roll out movies is not responsible. I think that's the only word I could use. Like, I don't think it's fair to have something like Roma, The Irishman, Mank, this movie that we're talking about that David Fincher just made. It shouldn't come up on our featured material, what you should watch next. This is a serious fucking film. This is not somebody's first film.
They lie about all that bullshit. If I see what's trending on Netflix and then I go to you at home's Netflix and it says what's trending, it's a lie, right? So they're actually learning the dark fucking Twitter, Facebook value of like, people don't want the truth. They want their truth to be validated. And so you're entering a dark sphere. So what David Fincher is missing out on this whole, like, that's the way to go and that's the future. What he doesn't say is there is you're in or you're out. If you're not first, you're last downside to this that he just neglected altogether, basically because he said Netflix will make whatever the fuck I want and I don't have to have a conversation the way that I would everybody else. The reason House of Cards is on Netflix is not because he saw streaming going that way. It's because they didn't feel like shooting a pilot and then getting feedback on it before filming the rest of their series. They wanted to do the full series up front. So David Fincher, in a way, is exploiting his celebrity. So I don't hate the pushback on David Fincher in this particular.
He is. I know what you mean, but I have heard him speak specifically about that when he was trying to decide how they were going to make House of Cards. He referenced the fact that like almost nobody saw the Breaking Bad pilot and then watched it up to that point. Everyone started watching Breaking Bad when it came out on Netflix when season 3 dropped. All 1 through 2 and 3 released on Netflix, and a lot of people watched it when they caught up.
Apples and bananas.
I don't know about that.
Jeff, I'll get you to sit up straight and not slouch when you're making your points, so I don't have to spend 3 hours fixing your audio tomorrow.
This is the biggest point that I walked away with.
This is Dave's idea to bring this up, and here I am yapping about it.
I was listening to Ethan Cohen talk recently on an interview with it was cinematographer Dave, Jesus Christ, your face. Deakins.
Deakins.
The Robert Deakins, the Deakins.
Deakins. Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you.
Deakins.
Yes. Robert, and what is his wife's name? I feel terrible. Anyway, Ethan Cohen was on there, and he was talking about how this issue, how do filmmakers, especially people who have already come of age and are already successful, how do they feel about it? And he was like, he said something similar, but he was like, you know, Joel and I used to talk about this a lot. And then we kind of realized that we basically owe our entire career to videotape. Like a lot of our movies were not popular when they came out in the theater. Yeah. And most people got obsessed with them, watching them at home on small televisions. So I think the ultimate question is less to me about what happens up front with the money and the making of it. The only thing that is really precarious to me now is that, can we trust audience members to be responsible, active audience members at home, or are they going to be that lazy fuck who just clicks on the next thing that Netflix tells them to watch?
Or can we trust Netflix to give everybody a voice?
No. I don't know.
No, but Fincher is saying, well, I didn't expect Seven to make so much money, which he said. We were so surprised when Seven made so much money, and I was like, "What's the next Seven that's not going to get made because Netflix?"
Yeah, but Seven still went through a system that was more. They would have not released Seven had they thought it was terrible. It still went through a system where Netflix does release stuff, and they're like, you know, you like this, maybe you'll like this Seven movie. Seven did have to go through a very difficult, all the hoops of that studio system at the time. They were nervous to release it, but they also figured out how to market it correctly, and it actually tested really well. So they thought that they might have actually had a sleeper hit on their hands. Netflix is, I'm not saying Seven, but they might release some stuff, and you won't be able to tell the difference because of what you're saying, the way that they choose to release things. You can't really tell if it's a Roma or an Irishman unless you know the director's name. That's not how you should have to discern it as somebody who doesn't think about directors the way we know filmmakers. Nobody knows that stuff except for people in the industry. They just see a thumbnail shot and then they say, maybe I should watch it.
We're never working again. I actually don't care, by the way. I was just curious.
Give us a chance. Netflix. Let's go on.
We're going to move on to whatever happened to Baby Jane. I
That's
feel like
it, Dave. This is
no,
your idea.
No,
to
I
talk
feel
about this.
well. I mean, I feel like you guys talked it out, and we're good. I just wanted to watch you two fight. Really,
I
that's the
ultimately
whole
agree
reason I
with
I
brought
didn't
it up.
realize this was going to be a debate to get John and I to pick sides.
I do ultimately agree with him. I
Dance
think we need
puppets,
to be
dance.
wise. I know.
I actually agree with him too. I just wish it wasn't
I do
somebody
agree
so
with him.
successful making the point.
I
Even
mean,
though
I
it-
agree
even
with
though
him
it
as well.
speaks
No,
loud.
but it might need to be somebody like him. Like he is ultimately right.
Right.
That is where the more mindful
it.
stuff is happening. But anyway.
Basically, thank you, David Fincher, for taking this conversation on
Yes.
because a less
Thank
successful
you.
director can't risk their career the way that you can. So thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, David Fincher. We agree with you.
All right, so let's get back to our podcast for
Yes.
our non-visual listeners because I think we're up in double digits here, which would be fucking awesome. But
Not quite. Not quite.
yeah, we didn't announce this ahead of time, so that's on us. Let's go to whatever happened to Baby Jane. Whatever happened to Baby Jane? I gotta give you the pitch, but it's Betty Davis versus Joan Crawford. Here we go. You ready? So, a former child star torments her paraplegic sister in their decaying Hollywood mansion. This is a Hollywood story for sure. With this, I'm going to use their real names, even though you know Baby Jane. Baby Jane is Bette Davis. Betty Davis is Baby Jane. But Baby Jane was a very, very Shirley Temple type in the vaudeville circuit. I'm going to guess 1900, I forget the years, 1905, something like that. And so vaudeville circuit, Baby Jane was a huge success. And her sister, played by Joan Crawford, whose character name is Blanche, kind of very Blanche Dubois-esque, is a nobody. And then flash forward until when they're in their early 20s, Blanche becomes a huge film star, and Baby Jane, Bette Davis, is not. Most of the story takes place later on when they're in their later life, and Joan Crawford's character is in a wheelchair, and Betty Davis's character, who is the former child star, who is fucking insane, is basically the caretaker for her formerly really successful and wealthy sister in their home. And there's it's a feud. There's a huge feud back and forth. They're both kind of being vicious to each other in different ways. One's more psychological, one's more physical and psychological. And that's basically what the movie is. Who wants to take it from there?
I'll just say, if you like Stephen King's Misery, you need to see this film. And if you didn't, you still need to see this film. It takes such a fucking dark turn after the opening. Like, the opening leads in with the kids, and it's a song and dance number, and then, you know, the kid throws a tantrum, you're like, all right, a little bit of drama, and then it just goes full fucking left field and turns into a psychological thriller.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect example. I can't remember the last time I was this creeped out is the right word. It was creepy.
Yeah.
And
On
that
levels.
we are, you know, we have been nurtured with all of our amazing filmmaking stuff. And, you know, we just did a bunch of horror movies. I love thrillers. I love psychological thrillers, but we have been nurtured with all the special effects and the way we cut movies nowadays, the way we edit them. We try to scare you and creep you out differently. To use the George Lucas analogy, showing somebody as you kill the cat is way less interesting than implying that you've killed the cat. And
Yeah.
I feel like this is a kind of a good example of these are very famous actors. And for one thing, I want to celebrate the fact that it was super refreshing watching women at their age have a story this interesting, and to know, looking back at the history, that people went to see this fucking movie. This was
And
this
not-
was
Yeah.
not like a
it
niche
has
thing. This was
nothing
a
to
popular
do-
yeah,
film.
in the time it was written,
And
yeah,
nothing
that
to do with
that
looks.
wasn't a thing. Like,
Yeah, and not the,
yeah,
the opposite.
Your
to do,
starlets
honestly. It
were
was just
supposed to be
talent,
beautiful
right?
back then and stuff like that, and they
Right.
weren't. This was almost like Monster or something. Like
Yeah.
Betty Davis made herself hideous for this film, and
She was like
yeah,
Mrs.
worked it.
Havisham from
Yeah,
And
Great
I just think filmmaking wise, I feel like it's just a good example that it's something that kind of tying back into what we were just talking about. Most of this movie is a camera pointed at actors who are acting and talking to each other. It's not jump out scares. It's not huge set pieces. It mostly happens inside this mansion. You feel trapped inside this place with these women who are going insane. One of them is leading that place. You find out at the end that the other one was manipulating them for most of this time. We're not going to get into the details and stuff, but I don't know. I found it extremely refreshing because it's a different kind of creepy that if this is a good example, if you don't check into world cinema, older cinema, classic movies, you might never have had this sensation before. I can't remember having had this sensation from anything I'd seen in a contemporary setting. Certainly nothing that we saw in America in the past 5 or 10 years.
We got a comment here from,
did you find a comparison?
got a comment here from Eric
think of
saying,
anything?
accusing us of just giving everything away in this movie because their history isn't revealed to the end of the film. That's not entirely the case. Their history is revealed, like, there's a twist at the end, for sure. But no, we have by no means given everything away in this film.
Yeah,
this
we
goes
haven't
this
given-
goes to
yeah, we're-
places
we've
we
given
haven't
up to,
even
like, 20
touched
minutes in.
on.
We've
I
gone
said the
into, like, 20
manipulation thing,
minutes
but
in.
keep going. I
Also,
know what you mean,
no.
Eric. I know
Yeah,
what you mean. Bro.
I mean, yeah. There's a whole section on the end we won't even touch on because I feel like people need to experience that for themselves. But
And also
the guts of the movie is them being horrid to each other for some
yeah.
inadequately like some reason that we slowly becomes more apparent as it goes on. And there's a side plot with the composer as well.
Who's awesome. Oscar nominee. He was nominated for an Oscar for this. Victor Buono, who plays Edwin
So
Flagg,
strange.
the piano player. It's so fun and so strange. It's
What
so
was the
bizarre.
point of
Yeah.
that character? I'm not saying that
I mean-
negatively. It clearly it mattered, but what an interesting device of a character to
Yeah.
to reveal that side of Jane.
Sorry, all I got was what the fuck is up with Edwin. He's a super creepy drunk.
Super fucking creepy. Although
Wait, Liz's
what ended
mom
up being
is
very
full-grown
helpful to
adult.
me, what was very helpful to me is that, and I don't even know how to say this, you guys, help me out here. There were some cuts to Edwin where you finally had somebody in this crazy house where he was
Yeah.
looking at them like, oh my God, this woman is fucking insane. And I needed that. I needed to have somebody, I don't know if his character was developed in a way that would have satisfied every single person who watches this, but for those few moments where he looks at Betty Davis like, this woman is insane. Do I want to try to use her and get money out of her? Do I need to run out of here as fast as I can? I needed those moments. It was like a breather for me. It was very important for me. It was like a comma in the period in the sentence of this movie.
I also think it's okay. I am torn, and I'm gonna guess the two of you are as well. Of when it's good to watch this movie with IMDb. You know, back to David Fincher, what we were talking about before. I think what he's saying, he specifically said something we didn't say, which is like he misses when people go 700 to 1,200 people go to the theater to see a movie. It's been a long time since I've seen a movie with 1,200 people, if I've ever seen a movie with 1,200 people before. Even Broadway shows sometimes don't have 1,200 people, but sometimes you don't want people on their phone, but like what's going on behind the scenes, you know what I mean? Like we loved Girls, the show, because we believed that it was actually Lena Dunham and her real, you know what I mean? Like we don't separate Lena Dunham from Girls in this show. So we have Feud, which I keep referencing, but clearly they made a series about the actual feud that was going on between Betty Davis and Joan Crawford. For instance, Joan Crawford married the CEO of Pepsi and the chairman of Pepsi. Betty Davis bought a Coke machine and put it in their green room. Just, you know what I mean? Just like stupid shit like that they were doing in real life. They were actually tormenting each other. Does that make the movie better? No, but maybe. Does it make it more fun to watch? Kind of. You know? So it's like, if you're watching this at home,
They
you're like, why would I
definitely
watch this movie
they
from-
definitely use that.
Some of you might not even know who Betty Davis is, and she's one of the most famous, successful actresses of all time. And here we are, we're talking about this movie, her and Joan Crawford. They're both Oscar winners. They're both in the end of their career, and they're both feuding on screen, which mirrors a feud that's going on behind the scenes. I think that's fucking fascinating. Like, there's some really interesting shit going on with this. But yeah, so as far as back to Eric's point, Eric, you're all good, man. But you talked about how much information to give away. Let's give some of this information away because it makes it fat. I want you to watch this movie and sit there and go, one of them slaps the shit out of the other one. I'm telling you, because I just saw this movie, that slap was probably real.
Yeah, probably
I'm just gonna
That
kinetic.
go ahead
slap
and
is
say
real. Yeah.
Somebody
That
was
slap
tied
was real?
up in a scene. Somebody was tied up in a scene. Do you think that the other actress purposefully was fucking up lines so that person would be tied up for longer? Maybe. I think it makes the movie kind of fun to watch.
I don't know. I don't know if we can back that one. You might be making shit up.
I might be making shit up, but if you're, are you curious at home? Because this is the best part of the movie for me. Is I'm sitting there and I'm going, ha 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 ha. The twist
I mean, you
was
also
fun.
watch a lot of reality TV.
I don't watch a lot of reality television. I have I've already talked about my situation and the TV, the titty-ted that goes on with the remote.
The one thing I did like was principal shooting was a month. They shot over a month. And a month
Holy
later,
shit.
they were sneak previewing this thing in theaters.
Yeah, it
Like
was a
2
quick
months for a turnaround for a
And-
film.
Two
and
fucking
even though
pros.
they hated each other, they both got back-end credits because this was new to that back then, where they both were considered they were both considered producers. They were both very successful by this point, so they were given. How brilliant is this? So that they had to promote the movie together because they had financial stake in it, and they fucking hated each other in real life. But they had to put on a show and promote this movie because they would make more money if the movie was successful. That's fun. That's a fun reason to be entertained by this movie.
Did you find when they because there's times when she mimics Joan Crawford, and because she couldn't get the
sure you
voice
looked that
right,
up.
they dubbed Joan Crawford's voice on. Did you find that super creepy? Because she's like
Yeah.
the face she's making,
good
and
way.
then that other voice comes out, and I'm like, that's fucking creepy. It's really unsettling when she does it.
There are moments that exist, and again, and like, I encourage people to try to watch older movies and world cinema, because there are some things like that, like a detail like that, where they were dubbing a lot of the audio anyway. So you can't get away with something like that nowadays. It added this other fantastical element that made it more creepy when they exploited it, because we knew that it was dubbed audio. It just made it stranger.
Yeah.
It didn't affect the realism of the film. It didn't affect anything like that, because we were already trapped in this older style of filmmaking anyway. When she kicks her, when she fucking beats the shit out of her, when she kicks her right in the head and lays her out, that fucking scared me. Betty Davis's voice work in this movie
Yeah.
is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But you are, Blanche. You are in that chair. Like,
Yeah,
just
it's very Grey
everything that her,
Gardens for me. Grey Gardens.
the whole thing was super Grey Gardens. I'm reading some trivia here. She was talking about how, she knew she wanted that kind of look with makeup, and she decided to do it herself because she knew
And
nobody
didn't wash
would
her face.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's right here. If anybody's watching this video, like,
she looks like a doll.
there's-
Like she
this
looks
is-
like a doll gone bad.
and again, I want to kind of go back to what I was saying about the women of a certain age in certain types of roles. This isn't me just saying, "Oh, that's PC and that's correct." What came out of it when they said, "Fuck it, I want to do this anyway," and I don't know if society wanted them to do it, or if they were ready for it, or if Hollywood thought this was a great idea, but they did it anyway. And all that really happens is a good story that an audience member can enjoy, and people in the industry and fans of cinema can look at actors like that and realize how brave of both of them was it to say, "Fuck it, let's do it anyway, and let's lean into this, and let's not be glamorous. Let's show two women on their way out of that kind of lifestyle, that bullshit kind of material thing when they were both stars." This movie has nothing to do with that part of their life. That is barely expositional, because the only interesting stuff is when they are dealing with each other. And I don't know, I just feel like it's so respectable, and I don't think we make enough room for that in our storytelling nowadays. I think we tend to praise the come up and not the dealing with it, the conflict, the real life aspect. It actually ended up being more realistic to me because of that, even though I made that fantastical element.
Oh, we get the gush. The gush.
I know.
I was gonna make sort of a little pitch before I send it on, which is to your point, John. We don't celebrate that, which is a huge thing of Sunset Boulevard, is this fall down, that we're glorifying that fall down. And in real life, we love it. We love it when Lindsay Lohan and Britney Spears, when at least we think, we don't really know these people, but we think we know what's going on, and we think it's a fall from grace, and that's exciting. What if Olivia de Havilland had a sister in Sunset Boulevard who was a tormentor? Like, this is a Hollywood story about two women in weird positions, but what if the unsuccessful sister had the fall down that Olivia de Havilland did? And Olivia, you know what I mean? Like that's the kind of stuff is going on with me. These stories that they seem so similar to each other, and yet
You mean Gloria
this seems
Swanson, like the character of Norma Desmond in Sunset
Yes,
Boulevard?
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I was saying the wrong name. I'm so sorry.
It doesn't matter.
Yes. Fuck. Can you buzz me
Jeff
for that?
cannot
'Cause I have
read
a
tonight.
nine-
He cannot
I have
read
a
tonight.
9% beer. I'm not
Take,
reading.
take those glasses
but-
off. They're not doing good.
But I know what you mean.
But they're just like but I'm trying to get people to watch this movie, and it's on the Criterion Channel, which obviously we have, as a podcast, have been trying to get you to subscribe to for this whole time. But
Yeah.
it's a good. If you like Sunset Boulevard, you're gonna like this because it's like that, but rather than glorifying it, they show us the ugly. They show us the nasty between the two sisters, and it seems pleasant.
It's
Sometimes.
it's just so interesting to
fun.
me, and I'm very aware, audience. I'm going to put my foot in my mouth, I'm sure, but like this is a cisgender white straight male saying this in this time and age. But it's interesting when I started watching movies from this period, basically from the 30s too, including all the screwball comedies. There was a first wave of feminism that happened in the 50s, which we can all look at and study from like a scholarship point of view, but culturally, artistically, the leading ladies that these women were a part of in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, I encourage everyone to go back and watch what they were doing, the way they wrote dialogue for these women. These were not sex objects. These were women who, this is not a surprise. It's not a surprise when you see what their careers did up to this moment that they choose to make this movie. Something happened with the way we started casting leading women and character actresses after this period, starting in the later 60s and the 70s, and definitely in the 80s when it got out of control and the corporations got involved. So I also feel like just if you like to think of yourself as a responsible audience member and you feel like you're thinking about the issues that are being raised nowadays, maybe start with this movie and work backwards to watch what these incredible women did on screen. And I don't know, I think you're going to be very impressed. I know shit was fucked up in a different way behind the scenes back then, and we weren't there, so we can't comment on it directly. But there was a different style of writing for women, and these, I don't know, I just feel like this movie, it was just such a breath of fresh air.
I mean,
I can't remember. Let's just be honest. Feud starred women of this age only because it was based on a movie that happened in 1962. I don't know if that show would have been as successful had it not been based on these real life actresses. I want to believe that we would have tuned in and watched it because Ryan Murphy knows how to write stuff and those actresses are wonderful and we would have paid attention to it. But I don't know. I don't know if we would have. Do you disagree with that? Is that?
I don't disagree with any of that.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I just want to point out, when you mentioned the writing, I'd like to point out two lines in this film that really stood out to me. When they're in the fight and she's like, "It's my house," and it doesn't matter whose house it is. You got to act like a grown woman, like everyone else. I was like, if that's not poignant to today's fucking news cycle, what is?
Yes. Yes.
And the other one was the most heartbreaking fucking line in the film is like that after the twist and everything has happened, and she just looks at a totally blank face and says, "You realize all this time we could have been friends." And I think it's the saddest line delivery I've ever heard in my life. And
Yeah.
it's like I'm not
Too
giving
personal,
away
right?
anything there, but it's
Yeah.
that line is earned and that line is well delivered, and it's a perfect ending to the film, and it hits you right in the feels.
And just since this movie is technically, I do want to make this comment. So this movie is technically in the horror genre. From back then, it was kind of billed
How
as
awesome
horror.
is that?
Yeah, this
So
is not a
cool.
horror film.
There are, Jeff and I have mentioned before, we come from music theater backgrounds. Horror has used music theater in interesting ways in the past. And I have bitched before on this podcast about how I hate music theater is used, adapted for film. What an unbelievable vehicle to show you what is happening, the degradation of Betty Davis's character with the use of music theater. When she actually performs her songs, it is terrifying. It is
written a
probably
letter to
it's the most
Death.
horrible.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I
that's
mean, even the
Dad,
beginning-
she sings
There's
as
no
like a-
flaw
the
in it.
beginning is scary. The voice they chose for her singing voice as a child is terrifying. There's such an interesting use of the medium of musicals in a time period in the 60s when musicals were exploding out of Fox Studios.
Yeah.
I mean, right? It was Fox, right? Yeah.
let's make everyone
No,
hate
that was
them.
really
yeah.
interesting. Yeah, it was
I
really,
love that
really
too,
cool.
and again, literally my whole segment right now is just trying to get people to watch this. So to John's point about this being horror, this apparently created a subgenre called hag horror, which I'm sure is demeaning to women. It's basically like older women horror. I imagine again it would be like if Mrs. Havisham had her own movie.
I don't know if that's what it
Hag horror.
references. I think
But
it
also-
references actresses that transform themselves
I
for the
hope
role.
you're right.
Like as
I hope
I
you're right.
cited earlier, Stephen King's Misery.
I
Yeah.
hope you're right. It
That's a
also
cup
has
half full, but let's get.
It also has Psycho Biddy, Hagsploitation, and Grande Dame. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so I said Sunset Boulevard. Another thing that I thought about watching this movie, specifically to Psycho Biddy and Hag Horror, of course, is Fatal Attraction. So if you want to watch like a tentpole film starring literally two Oscar winners, like two all-timers, Joan Crawford and Bette Davis are all-timers, and you can see Fatal Attraction coming from this movie. You can see what would happen if Alfred Hitchcock couldn't be in charge of his leading ladies? Like, what if they were autonomous? What if they were, and they hated each other, but the one thing they always said about each other is that they were each pros. They never disrespected each other's professionalism. And I think that this is just an all-timer movie. I had no idea. You guys talked me into watching this movie. I did not recommend this, and I'm so glad you did.
Yeah, I had no idea what this was about.
I was watching this, and I said, thank God we have a fucking podcast, because I would have not. I would have died not seeing this movie, and I'm so happy I saw this movie.
Yeah,
This is one of
watch
those.
this movie.
I'm ashamed too. This is one of those that's been on my list for a long time, and I have not done a deep enough dive into Bette Davis's work.
Yeah, I'm thinking that now too.
There is a Fatal Attraction reference. If you know your Fatal Attraction with the bunny and the soup.
Yeah.
Those dinner plates.
Yeah.
One of the sisters who's tormenting her, she opens up the dinner platter and she lifts off the lid. And I'll just say, if you've seen Fatal Attraction and you know the bunny reference with the boiling bunny, not too dissimilar. I'm telling you, like it's here. Know your history, people. This is amazing.
And I'm going to tie it into our David Fincher conversation, and maybe this will be the ending. He was talking about. I was listening to him recently talking about making Panic Room, and how he was like he's interested. He always likes messing with thriller material because there's not as much pressure put on you as a director to like, what are you trying to say with this movie? Like people can, just have fun and go on dates and watch these kinds of things. And he was talking about the slow motion sequence in Panic Room where she runs to get the cell phone and she can't quite reach it. It's falling away. And he was like, God damn it. Well, if we're going to pander, let's fucking pander. This movie puts on a fucking clinic when Joan Crawford is going down the stairs for how to pander a suspense scene in a thriller movie. Like you've been waiting for her to do this the whole fucking time. You're so angry at her that she hasn't done it already. And then she takes a million years to climb down these stairs. And it's just so effective. It doesn't matter that it feels like it's falling into a genre thing. She's acting so sincerely that it's impressive as fuck. And I don't know if it was one of the first times these devices were used, but I feel like it's just another good example that when your actors know what the fuck they're doing and you sincerely go for it, it doesn't matter if it's a device or not, it's going to be effective. Because when Bette Davis came back home, I was terrified.
Same.
I was very unsettled.
Yeah.
Oh, with a piece of paper. Shout out to David Fincher for the Panic Room reference, John. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dave.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, we got to bring this home. I think the short answer is watch this movie. What we're going to do is we're going to say a quick goodbye to everyone who joined us for Facebook Live tonight. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
So much. And thank you, Eric, for your comments. We really appreciate that feedback.
Look at her.
Appreciate it.